And so Nancy Pearcey talks about giving this talk at Harvard, and one of the Harvard. Yeah. They come up and tell her that these people they know their theories don't explain ordinary life outside the lab.
Yeah. So this guy's mad, right? Why are you doing this?
But why throw it in their faces?
Yeah.
And so it's interesting.
So this is a real guy that came up to her and said this.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. It's so what? Algebra only works in the lab. It doesn't mean that you can take it outside and launch rockets with it. Why are you being so mean? Algebra's fine. No, that's not what it is. These scientists and philosophers know that their theories do not fit the real world. And in Romans 1, Paul says the testimony of general revelation is knowable by everyone. Again, this agreement with what Scripture is saying. When we read Romans 1, that those who worship idols are without excuse, those words may seem harsh. And in this chapter, however, we have met several scholars who openly acknowledge that their reductionist theories clash with the facts of the experience. They are aware at some level that they harbor a severe contradiction. Derek Parfit says this type of inner conflict is actually quite common. And addressing his fellow philosophers, he writes, at a reflective or intellectual level, we may be convinced that some view is true, but at another level, one that engages more directly with our emotions, we may continue to think and feel as if some other view were true. Again, feelings that belong up top. What's real is in the box.
Only at the bottom. Yeah.
Many of us, I suspect, have a inconsistent belief about the metaphysical question that concerns us most, such as free will, consciousness, and self. This is what they have to deal with.
Yeah.
So how do philosophers justify this? Well, they just have a double truth theory. They are hardwired to hold certain ideas as true in terms of first-person experiences, and then some ideas as false according to science. So experience versus science. So, does science and faith have a conflict? No, the real question is, does science and experience within the scope of these scientists themselves, these materialists, these romanticists, is there a conflict there? That seems to be the better question. And as intelligent agents, we are compelled to believe. Again, there's your keywords there. Certain things, compelled to believe certain things. Most importantly, that our will is free, that we ourselves that persist through time, that there are moral truths that can be universalized, beliefs which, as individuals committed to science, we yet know to be false. And again, this false according to materialist conception of science. So, these things fall outside their theory, and so they must be illusions. They must be of a former time, but it may be useful to keep society going and all that stuff.
That's right. All that good stuff.
Yeah.
Whoops, wait, can't say good.
To acknowledge the evidence from general revelation would point them towards the biblical God, and so they suppress the evidence because that's what they desire to. That's what their free will, within the confines of any scope of their ability to be free, it gives them.
Right. And they admit it, right?
Yeah.
Frances Crick is who she's, right?
Watson here expresses his religious motivation. Discovery of double helix, he said, gives grounds for thinking that powers held traditionally to be exclusive property rights of the gods might one day be ours. Yay. So we get to supplant God.
Yeah.
At least for some, the purpose of proposing reductionist theories is to deny the Creator and to extrapolate or expropriate his divine powers, which is essentially what Romans 1 says that they would do.
Yeah. Good. So she's at Harvard. She's gonna, give this talk. She gives this talk. This Harvard professor comes up to her and tells her, they know their theories don't explain ordinary life. Why are you throwing it into their face, right?
Yeah,
and
that's just mean. That's not being a good colleague.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so she says the first thing that struck her was that he had let slip an amazing admission that these scientists and philosophers know that their theories do not fit the world, right?
Which in any other theory, you submit your paper. Here's my theory. Here's my test. Can you look at it?
Yeah.
Friends, colleagues.
Yeah.
Oh, here's
make sure it fits the world.
Yeah. Here's this thing that I found. It doesn't fit. You love your children. Oh, it's been falsified.
That's
or
right. Yeah.
Or let me look at it again and see if it is falsified or if I can save it in some capacity.
Right. You're angry because the bank didn't balance your check. It's falsified.
Yeah. Why isn't there $1 million?
So that's the first thing, right? They know, right? They know that their theories are fit.
Right.
And he let this slip. The second thing that this guy let slip, this Harvard professor, she says, the second thing that struck me about the Harvard professor's comment was that he characterized an analysis of someone's worldview as, quote, throwing it in their faces, right? The goal of testing worldview should never, she tells us, attack those who hold them, but to open their minds to a better alternative, right? In other words, our goal isn't to attack. It isn't to put people down. It isn't to make them feel silly and that sort of thing, right? We're to persuade people, but gently.
Yeah.
Right, and with compassion.
Yeah, if you read Paul in Romans 1, there's not here's all the things that will happen. Here's all the sins that they will commit and do, and hate them for it, and laugh at them and show them no mercy. Well, no, he goes on to say this is what an unbelieving people do, and so here's a way that we can preach the gospel to them.
Yeah, good. Yeah, so she says people often hold half-baked ideas that they would reject if they really understood clearly where those ideas led. So one of the things that we're trying to do is to clarify their thinking, especially in terms of the consequences of their ideas, right? And so she says an effective method of apologetics can be to gently press people to think more carefully by peeling away the protective layers so that they can see the implications of their views more clearly. Only then will they be truly free to make tough decisions and choices about their fundamental convictions, right? So Christians' motive in apologetics should be a God-inspired grief for the loss, right? Not to win an argument or to put somebody else down or to make myself feel better, right? When talking to people trapped in a secular worldview, we can help them to see that it gives no basis for the realities of life that they themselves care most about. The very fact that they cannot live within its cramped confines is a sign that they were made to live in a larger, richer, conceptual universe. Secularism, she tells us, secularism is too small for secularists. It's just too small. And so she said we should begin by expressing solidarity with their deepest longings for meaning and significance, and then show that in a biblical worldview, those longings are not merely illusions or useful fictions, but living realities. This is the way the world really is, right? We often hear stereotypes. She tells us about that Christianity is negative and repressive, and that it regards human nature as corrupt and worthless, that it places little value on life in the world. But in reality, the Christian worldview has a much higher view of human life than any competing system. It gives a logical basis for the facts of experience that are denied by the dominant secular worldviews of our day: freedom, creativity, love, personal significance, genuine truth. How can we be anything but loving and joyful in communicating such a life-giving message?
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, if that's not your goal, if your goal is to get the most likes on Twitter, if it's to have the best Uber, then you are living inconsistent within your own worldview as a self-proclaimed Christian.
Good. The other common negative stereotype, she says, about Christianity is that it's irrational, right? It doesn't make sense, or it's contradictory. Yeah, right? Yeah. She says in the next chapter, which we'll do next time, you'll learn how to turn the tables on that charge, that Christianity is irrational, to show that it is really, in reality, it's idols that lead to irrationality and self-contradictory worldviews, and not Christianity.
I think this is the fun part.
Yeah. And you'll learn a simple yet devastating strategy, she tells us, to demonstrate how idolatrous worldviews shoot themselves in the foot. Right?
Yeah, putting it mildly.
Yeah.